What's happening, people? Welcome back to Movie Crack, where we chat about movies, have a bit of crack along the way, or fun for those non-Irish folk out there, you know. Xeno, directed by Matthew Lauren Oates, is a love letter to the movies from the 80s and the 90s, when movies were good, you know. The story follows Rennie, played by Lulu Wilson, a young teenager who befriends a visitor from another world. Ooh. I gotta tell you, man, this movie surprised the hell out of me. I did not think this movie would be much good. I went to see it by pure chance today, and I was the only one in the theater, sadly, because this is going to go under the radar by the looks of things, and I think it deserves a bit more attention than that. So let's get into it. So the main story is focused on Rennie, a character who lives in a house with her mom, Linda, played by Ren Schmidt. Apologize if I'm butchering that. She also lives with her stepdad Chase, who's a bit of a cunt, to be quite honest, because he drinks a lot and he kind of bullies everybody, and so she's a bit messed up in the head. Her escape from the sad reality of her life is her love of living things, or it appears so anyway. She has a collection of exotic animals like snakes and reptiles, and so you can see she has a soft spot for living things, and I guess that feeds into her relationship with the alien later on in the movie. So I like that aspect of her character. I thought it was very relatable. Sereni storms out of the house one night and comes across a visitor she doesn't expect to see in the form of an alien named Croak. Her and this alien then create this kind of a bond together and kind of a friendship. And then later in the story, some shady folks from the government come around and shit goes down, events occur, and that's the simple nutshell of what this story is. So it's definitely a story that's simplistic by nature, but very effective. If this movie tried to be more complicated, I feel like it might not have worked, but it might have actually done it a lot of good, as well, as you'll see with my nitpicks here. So starting off with the main characters, in my opinion, the main actress does a good job with what she's working with. Rennie and her mom Linda, they're by far the most fleshed out characters in this story. Everybody else is pretty forgettable, to be quite honest. So sadly, that's the way it is, but still entertaining. An example of one of these forgettable characters is the main antagonist, or the main government guy, who's Jonathan Keyes, played by Omari Hardwick. And credit where credit's due, it's not the actor's fault, it's just the writing that he's working with. And sadly, he's not working with a whole lot. His character is very shallow. He has a deep resentment for these alien folk, because he's clearly had something happen in the past, but it never really dives deep enough into it to understand him fully. So he really just comes across as a cunt, to be quite honest, for no reason. So sadly, there could have been more there. Also, there is some inconsistencies with other characters. For example, Rennie. She's supposed to be this teenager who loves all living things, or I guess loves animals or whatever. But she sicks the alien on a group of fucking pigs at one point and just kind of laughs at it. And it's very disturbing, actually. I'm like, whew, that's a little rough. Are you not supposed to be the nice person who doesn't want to kill things? So a little bit inconsistent there with some of the characters. So story overall, very simple, shallow at times, but very effective for what it was trying to be. Some inconsistency with the characters there, as I was saying, and some characters that are just a little bit bland. Thought could have been done better. Um, but the alien, who also is a character, I guess. So the alien's name is Croak, as I was saying, and Croak, he's kind of more like a dog than an alien. He doesn't have the kind of personality that like ET, for example, would have. He can't really talk. So I mean, there is a boundary of communication there, and a lot of the communication with him is done through his eyes and how he looks at the main character. And it is pretty effective to a certain point, but you never really learn much about where it's from or why it's there or what its goal is. It's just kind of, it's hinted at times. Don't get me wrong; it's touched on a little bit in the movie, but never enough to kind of really give you the meat and bones of why it's there. So I'm a little bit disappointed in that way too. But he looked really good, so that was a plus. So moving on to the pacing. The pacing in this movie is not too bad. I mean, I've seen worse. The movie's about an hour and 45 minutes long, I think. It could have been 15 minutes shorter, and I feel like the story could have been just as effective. So that's kind of my one nitpick with the pacing. As far as the flow of the movie, it like flows very well. I mean, into each sequence, so no real problems with that. But as I said, it could have been cut a little bit short. It's a little bit long on the tooth for a finish. So story and pacing for me, a good 3 out of 5. Not so bad, easy money. Moving on to the visuals and the direction. Well, the alien in this movie has clearly taken some inspiration from other aliens we know of. You see what I'm getting at here? I see what you were doing, Mr. Director. I see what your thinking was. Visually, this movie, very, very nice on the eyes, I must say. It was quite a nice movie to watch. It was well directed. I can't really complain much about it. Now, it was a very low budget movie, and that comes across sometimes in the filmmaking. Lots of low lighting and lots of quick events that you don't really see much of what's going on because it's so kind of dark and that kind of thing. But it really doesn't take away much from the movie. It actually adds a bit of mystery to it. So I didn't find it too bad. There is another thing about the visuals and the editing in general that I noticed. There are lots of random cuts in this movie. Sometimes in the middle of a conversation, and it could be a deep conversation, but the cuts are so bang bang in the middle of it. It's like it took me out of the movie a little bit. So I don't know what the story was there. Was it a time thing? Was it a case that they had to direct scenes at different times and it just didn't really blend well together? I don't know. But there's very prominent cuts in the middle of scenes in this movie, and they're very obvious. It took me out of the movie a little bit. But no, overall, visuals and direction for me were fairly good. I'm going to give it a 3 out of 5 for visuals and direction. Not so bad. Next, music and sound effects. Well, the music in this movie was pretty forgettable. I mean, I don't really remember any of the songs that was on during my time watching it, so that's not a great sign. So, thumbs down there. But the sound effects were pretty damn good in this movie. The monster sounded good. The gunshots sounded good. The voiceovers or the dialogue all was sounding good. So really no complaints on the sound effects front, but the music was pretty bland. So for me, 3 out of 5 for music and sound. So there you have it, folks. 3 out of 5 overall final score for Xeno. Quite an impressive movie, I must say. I saw this by chance, as I was saying. I did not expect much, and it was very entertaining. So, if you like this movie talk and like this movie crack, stick around. Like, follow, subscribe. Don't be a nice person. We'll see you in the next one. Hopefully, it's a good one. Good luck.